So it was a little kid going for like a speeding belt, this tall. It was me, and then there was like someone else that was older than 100 years old that got in. That's we were both sleeping next to each other. It was very, very silly. It was good though. Jim can't make it. He's at a Lions Club event, and I think Rick is not here, but I don't know if he's going to log on. What's that? Okay. I don't think he's going to log on, so I don't think that he's. All right, it's 7 o'clock here. All right. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call.
Mike, I have you muted still. I'm just starting the live streams.
Testing. There we go. All right. All set. Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call our special joint meeting to order. We have here today our Board of Selectmen members, minus Jim Tripp and Rick Shar. Do we have everyone from the Board of Ed here? Stacy, yeah, Stacy will be, okay, very good. And we also have our Strategic Capital Improvements Committee here as well. So I'd like to turn it over to Carl now.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Carl Johnson. I'm the chairman of the Strategic Capital Improvements Committee. I've also been a town employee from 2018 to 2022. Finished my career here as the Director of Facilities and Grounds for the Board of Education and started this whole project. The committee was established by the Board of Selectmen after the referendum failed in November of 2024 for the school project to have one elementary school, which would have been located at Valley View. The committee was named by the Strategic Capital Improvements Committee. The committee would be tasked with coming up with recommendations for facility repairs and improvements for our elementary and secondary schools, and also make recommendations for grade levels in each school with the potential of decommissioning a school. After our appointment meeting in December of 24, we began our regular meetings January 2nd, 2025. While we did that, we then had meetings pretty much weekly or several meetings a month. We toured Brownstone Intermediate School, Gildersleeve School, and Valley View School, and were joined by Friars Architectural firm who helped with repairs and upgrade costs, as well as eligible reimbursement costs. We reviewed the Sightlines Committee, which was started back, I believe, in 2020, and the Friars cost analysis for all facilities. After several months of meetings, on June 16th, 2025, the committee reviewed several different school options. Motions were made, voted several times on different options before passing the last option plan by a committee vote. The committee approved the plan draft on July 29th, 2025 at our last meeting, which you will hear more this evening about from Dr. Britton's presentation. I would like to thank the committee for all the long hours of hard work to accomplish this. And this is the list of I want to go through this. The Strategic Capital Improvement Committee members were Brett Bukowski, Christopher Dickman, Jennifer Martinez, Darcy Parmley, Selectman John Dillon, Robert Shea, Director of Facilities and Grounds, Benjamin Serb, Laurel Steinhauser, who was the co-chairman of this committee and also the chairperson for the Board of Education. I'd also like to thank Dr. Charles Britton, Friars Architects, Downs Construction, Slam Architects, Recording Secretary Sharon Hoy, and Tricia Dean, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent, and also the school and town tech staff for having Zoom at all these meetings. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Carl. You did a great job with this committee. It was a pleasure to work with you. For though I think I know everyone here, but if people are watching online and you don't know me, my name is Charles Britton. I'm the superintendent of schools for the Portland Public Schools. So what's interesting is the last time I stood before all of you in this exact setting was June 2023. If you'll cast your mind back, the individual who introduced me at that time was Lou Pear, who had been the chair of a different committee. We called that committee the Facility Study Committee. I see Ms. Scotto was on that committee. Mr. Murphy was on that committee for the board. Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Hetrick were on that committee, and several other folks. And that committee had done an awful lot of work over a year. We had at that time spent quite a bit of money from our COVID relief funds on an architecture firm. We had done demographic studies. We had done an awful lot of work. And at that time in June 2023, I shared with you a committee report that by a vote of 5-3 with one abstention had recommended that Valley View become a pre-K, be renovated to new to become a pre-K 3 school, so renovated to new and expanded, that Gildersleeve be decommissioned, and that Brownstone be renovated to new to become a grades 4 through 6 school, and that the basement and the auditorium and other parts of that building be turned over to the town. If you remember that, that was what I presented in June 2023. That began a process of many discussions at the board, both board levels. And if you'll remember, first selectman who recommended that a townwide survey be done. That was the Great Blue Survey, because I understood, and I still do, that, you know, it's a big change, and it was a lot of change, and it was a very expensive proposition, and it wasn't one that was unanimously embraced by the community. For better or worse, I have not yet found a solution that everybody agrees to. That's what makes this so complicated. But at that time, the idea was to survey the community and respond to the wishes of the voters of Portland. When that survey came back, the preferred option was for a pre-K 5 Valley View with 6th grade moved to the middle school, with decommissioned Gildersleeve, a decommissioned Brownstone, and a pre-K 5 renovated to new and greatly expanded Valley View. There were the town meetings that followed. We did a lot of work with our ed specs plans. We put together a conceptual order of magnitude budget, shared that with our town financial planner, got the bonding tables, shared it with bond counsel, and all of that materialized on a bonding measure. Next slide, please. That was put before the voters. Dylan, if you could push the slide forward. That was put before the voters last November during the presidential election. That bonding measure would have moved 6th grade to the middle school, decommissioned Gildersleeve, decommissioned Valley View, and created a decommissioned Gildersleeve, decommissioned Brownstone, and expanded Valley View to create a pre-K 5 school. That was a $66 million proposition. That was defeated relatively handily. We all remember that. That's what happened. Next slide, please. Right after that vote, I guess I would start here. Right after that vote, a lot of us, you know, took some time, took a breath, asked ourselves, what was it about that question, about that measure, about that idea that the community didn't like? Now, I have to be honest, we didn't do any formal study, but we could read the social media comments. We could see the editorials in the River East, and we had lots of conversations with folks in the community about what it was about that proposition that the community voted no for. And these are the reasons that I've sort of gleaned from that feedback. First, there were significant concerns about the size of the school. You couldn't go far in Portland without seeing a vote no on a mega school sign. the size of the school was something that a lot of people were concerned about. The logistics of it, lunch wave scheduling, impact on school climate and culture, and generally going from 3 of the state's very smallest elementary schools to one of the state's larger elementary schools in a small town was something we heard from the community that wasn't an idea that a lot of people could get behind. So the size of the school was definitely a cause for concern. The impact of traffic on High Street, on Hall Hill Road, on potentially Bartlett, on other areas was also a concern. There was definitely concern about, well, what would happen to a decommissioned brownstone and a decommissioned Gildersleeve? I know that this town has some experience in the current town hall. That was a school at one time. It was boarded up for a long time in town. That left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And there was a concern that if there wasn't a plan for what to do with a decommissioned Gildersleeve and a decommissioned brownstone, they might sit idle or vacant. And that wasn't something that the community could support. So there was uncertainty about what might happen to decommissioned schools. There was also a pretty significant concern about what the impact on the community would be if you lost a gym, right? If Brownstone had no longer been available to the community and Gildersleeve gym was no longer available, while the plan had us adding a gym to Valley View, the net loss could have been 1 gym. And there were lots of folks in town, particularly travel basketball and others, that felt like that would make scheduling of events like basketball difficult. So there was certainly concern about the gym space. We also heard that the resolution didn't have any funding in it for the secondary school. And we know that the building you're in now, here tonight, also needs quite a bit of work. And that if we had passed this bonding measure, any future money that might be needed for capital improvements at the secondary school could be difficult to secure. Then, of course, there were concerns about the costs, the mill rate impact, and the idea that at that point, the bonding measure length would have been 30 years. Lots of folks felt like that was too long, right? So there were concerns about the costs, the impact on the mill rate, and the length of the proposed bonding schedule. And then, of course, there were communication issues, right? That it was a very complicated plan. A lot of people didn't necessarily feel like the communications that they received were clear and precise or answered all of their questions. So those are the 7 reasons that I gleaned from social media and conversations and reading editorials in the River East. I believe that those reflect the reasons why about 60% of the people in Portland came out and voted no on that measure. Next slide, please. So right after that, the Board of Selectmen got together on November 20th, formed by resolution a new committee, the Strategic Capital Improvements Committee. And that committee was tasked with doing these 3 things. I took this language right from the resolution the Board of Selectmen passed. We were asked to go forward to get back at it. So if we know we must do something, that plan wasn't embraced by the community, we would like a plan B. At that time in November, I was hearing that the committee was asked to try to bring a plan forward that we might get to another bonding measure last spring. That was very ambitious. Certainly, we felt like it was going to be more important to take our time and not rush things and do it a little bit more slowly. So we weren't able to bring you any proposals or any ideas by the spring. We spent all spring, really all winter and all spring and into the summer doing our homework. I can tell you that under Carl's leadership, we really did leave no stone unturned, and I'm prepared to present to you tonight a report that outlines how we would respond to these 3 bullet measures. Next slide, please. Our first meeting was January 2nd, 2025. And the first thing we did was take a look at the Facilities Study Committee report. As part of that, I think one of the most important things Lou Pear led us through with that committee was we had done a whole bunch of focus groups, many focus groups with teachers, parents, students, administrators, everybody in the community. We visited the RTC, the DTC. I mean, we took the show on the road and we asked the community what their priorities were for their facilities. these were the 9 things, and they're rank ordered in terms of what we heard from Portland residents were most important. That whatever we did, we should be able to impress upon the community how that plan would provide high quality academic space, positive school climate, promote school security, promote high quality indoor air quality, would be energy efficient, flexible, and cost effective, capacity for enrollment growth if we ever added pre-K or enrollment went up, certainly ADA compliant, and that there was dedicated community space when the schools weren't using the facilities. Our strategic planning committee with Carl unanimously agreed that these were our priorities too. We cribbed those priorities from the facility study committee and made them ours too. So these were unanimously supported by the strategic planning committee and as well as by the facility study committee. Next slide, please. Also, right away, the committee took some votes. We did some sort of straw polls, went around the table and asked each other what we thought we could all agree to. And there was very quickly unanimous agreement, 9-0 agreement, like complete yes to each one of these. First, the committee unanimously agreed that consolidating from 3 elementary schools to 2 was in the community's best interest. Unanimous agreement on that. The committee also unanimously agreed that moving 6th grade to the middle school makes a lot of sense. There is space here at the middle school. It wouldn't require any work on the middle school. I could move the 6th grade to the middle school before Thursday. I wouldn't suggest we do that, but we could do that. We could move the 6th grade to the middle school relatively efficiently without having to do massive amounts of work. The space exists here at the secondary school. So consolidating from 3 to 2, moving the 6th grade to the middle school, and we all agree that we can't do nothing, right? This is really important for everybody to hear. And I know Bob is in the room. Carl is here as the former facilities director. I have teachers here. I promise you there will be a lot of nodding heads when I say our schools need work. Valley View, Gildersleeve, and Brownstone are reaching a point. Right now, they're safe and they're healthy and they're ready to be open Thursday. And I can't wait to get our students back in them. But we're reaching a point where if we don't do anything and ignore this problem, we will start to experience critical failures like the boiler going at Brownstone, which I hope is here before the cold weather gets here. The roofs are failing. Bob is having a really hard time keeping our facilities dry. They are going to eventually reach a point where they can't service teaching and learning if we don't do anything about them. So the committee unanimously agreed, yes, we can't ignore this problem. We must do something. Next slide, please. So here is the elephant in the room. If we consolidate from 3 elementary schools to 2, the first thing we have to decide is which elementary school do we want to decommission? When I was here in June, I presented a plan to you that would have closed Gildersleeve. We went to the voters with a referendum in November that would have had us decommissioning, closing Gildersleeve and Brownstone. You could close Valley View, you could close Gildersleeve, or you could close Brownstone. Any one of those 3. There are certainly logistical and expense differences, but it is possible to decommission any one of those 3 schools. So these were the options. Decommission Valley View and create a pre-K2 facility at Gildersleeve and a 3-5 facility at Brownstone. Decommission Gildersleeve, create a pre-K2 facility at Valley View and convert Brownstone into a 3-5. Or decommission Brownstone and create a pre-K2 facility at Valley View and a 3-5 facility at Gildersleeve. These were the options. There is still not unanimous agreement on our committee about which of these options is preferable. Next slide, please. At the end of the process, next slide, please. After lots of discussion, the committee voted 7-2 to decommission Brownstone Intermediate School, convert Valley View into a pre-K2 facility, and convert Gildersleeve into a grade 3-5 facility. It was passionate. It was sometimes heated. It was deliberative. It was exactly the type of deliberations you want on a committee. We didn't reach full agreement on it, but at the end of the day, by a vote of 7-2, this was the option the committee felt was best. What I'm going to present to you tonight is what the 7 people who voted yes, this reflects their thinking. This reflects the logic and the suggestion that has come out of this committee. Next slide, please. So why Brownstone? What is it about Brownstone that the committee felt like that was the school that we'd like to decommission? First, we have to understand that the costs of alterations on Brownstone were significantly higher than the costs of the alterations or renovations at Gildersleeve and Brownstone. A lot of that has to do with the size and age and condition of the school. It's much larger, and it would be significantly more expensive to do the type of work that would be necessary to take an aging 1930s high school and turn it into a modern 2030s elementary school. The second issue is the same issue the Facility Study Committee ran into. If you're going to renovate a school to new, the reimbursement rate you receive from the state is sensitive to student enrollment. That school was way too large to receive the full reimbursement rate. So what we would have had to do is either A, demolish a large part of the building if we were going to renovate it to new. And the committee felt like that was a no way. Like, I don't think anybody in the community would want to see a large part of Brownstone ripped off, which is what it would have been necessary. Or we would have been back to the Facility Study Committee recommendation to seek special approval from the state to turn over the basement, wall it off, and turn over the auditorium or some other large part of the building to the town, and only focus on renovating to new those parts that we're using as the school, which would have created on this side of the wall a very old building and on this side of the wall a very new building with different mechanical servicing each. So there were a lot of logistical reasons and expense that would have had to go into renovating to new or altering Brownstone. There's also a concern that even if we were going to spend that amount of money and renovate that building to new, there were a lot of concerns shared by teachers and others, and I share some of them, that converting again a 1930s era high school into a developmentally appropriate 2030s era elementary school just wasn't feasible based on the design of the building, the original ed specs plan that was written for it probably in the 1920s versus what we would need now to make it an appropriate learning space, especially for 3rd and 4th graders. And another concern we have, of course, is that I hope you've all taken a ride down past Brownstone and taken a look at what's happening, literally a stone's throw away. There is a giant Nordic spa going in right next to Brownstone. There are concerns about how that is going to influence traffic patterns and congestion in that area, and whether that would somehow negatively affect things like parent pickup, parent drop-off, and students' ability to cross the street safely or otherwise access that building in a way that doesn't raise any concerns. And finally, and this is the most important one, and this was raised by a committee member, that Brownstone has the most potential to become something else. Its location and its condition, it very easily could be a municipal facility and used to support town activities, or potentially someday some combination of municipal and commercial entity. It is a beautiful building. The town loves this building, and it has a ton of potential to transition into something else. And we have some suggestions for what that something else might be. So those are the primary reasons why the committee decided that Brownstone would be the best, would be the candidate for decommissioning. Next slide, please. That said, the committee recognized that part of the reason why folks came out and voted no on the mega school, right, was because they wanted to know what would happen to Brownstone. Right? There was a real concern in the community that it would be boarded up and not used, and otherwise it's a beloved entity here in town. So the committee felt like we have to address that. We need to put forward some ideas for what Brownstone could become. So our recommendation here is that we put $2 million into Brownstone to start for the electrical system. Part of the problem at Brownstone is we can't run mini splits or air conditioning or many things in Brownstone because the electrical system can't support it. If you put a new electrical system in it, then you could transition it into year round, especially in the summer when it's very hot, use if you put mini splits or otherwise we're able to cool or circulate the air in a way that the electrical system could support. So the idea is put $2 million into it and then short term, turn the facility over to Portland Park and Rec, Portland Youth Services, Portland Food Bank, and expand the lease with Oak Hill so that more of the classrooms can be rented as a special education facility. That is the committee's recommendation, and that was approved by the committee 7-2. Okay, next slide, please. So here we go. So let's move to Valley View. So there was conversation about and a proposal to decommission Valley View. And I wanted to address some of the reasons why the committee, the majority of the committee felt that decommissioning Valley View didn't make sense, right? The committee thought that decommissioning Valley View made less sense because it shares a campus with the secondary school. I mean, we could literally walk right down the hill and we are at Valley View. The secondary school and the Valley View are on the same campus, which again creates operational efficiencies for us and makes sense to keep. The second reason is that it's the only school we have with sufficient acreage. There's the ball field right across from it, and there's the parking lot, and even to the extent that work could be done on the hill up towards the secondary school, that if the population in Portland ever grew and you needed to expand, there's space at Valley View to expand, whereas the other facilities don't have that same acreage or ability to increase its footprint. Also, the facility is currently used as a pre-K 1 school. It was formerly used as a pre-K 2 school. The community has experience with it, and it is purpose-built, purposefully designed as an early childhood education facility. The other concern is that Valley View doesn't have a regulation gym. Okay, Valley View has a multi-purpose room with tiles, right? We use the multi-purpose room for physical education classes, but it doesn't have hardwood. It doesn't have basketball nets. It's not lined for volleyball. If you turned it over to Portland Park and Rec, they wouldn't have much use for it. I mean, it's not a gym. It's a multi-purpose room. As a Park and Rec entity, if you turn Brownstone over to Park and Rec, you'll have a community theater and a full gym. If you turned Valley View over to Park and Rec, it doesn't have a theater and it doesn't have a gym, so it wouldn't be of much use to Parks and Rec. And then finally, in considering what the disposition of that school might become, unlike Brownstone, because of its condition and location, there isn't a lot of uses other than as a school that Valley View might evolve into. Likely what you would be doing someday is demolishing it or putting money into it or selling it for educational purposes. We couldn't really think of a lot of value in that facility outside of its use as a school. So those are the reasons why I believe the 7 votes to keep Valley View, that was the logic that came out of those discussions. So next slide, please. So here was the recommendation. By a vote of 7-2, the committee recommends that we renovate to new with a slight expansion. So there will be a slight amount of square footage added to the building, but a lot of this has to do with gutting the building and reconfiguring it and adding a gym. By doing that, you could renovate to new and turn that facility back into, I should say, a pre-K 2 facility. Prior architecture was very helpful in guiding us in the cost considerations of that. They believe that the total cost of a renovation to new on that facility would be $47 million. We recently took a look at our state reimbursement rate, and calculate what bonuses we would get for the early childhood education, pre-K parts of it, and for our relationship with open choice. And we believe that if we do everything right, we could receive 60% reimbursement from the state of Connecticut. So the cost to the town for this would be $18 million. The cost from Hartford, from the state of Connecticut, would bring in an additional $28.2 million. Total cost $47 million to renovate to New Valley View, add a gym, turn it into a pre-K2 facility. Next slide, please. And Gildersleeve. Now, interesting consideration. It's going to take a little bit of explaining. Bear with me. We considered a renovation to new of Gildersleeve. We considered that because that, similar to Valley View, would maximize the reimbursement we could receive from the state. If we renovate Gildersleeve to new, up to 60% of that potentially could be reimbursed from the state, and 40% of those costs would be shouldered by the town of Portland. However, again, similar to Brownstone, if we renovate to new, we can only renovate the amount of square footage that's sensitive to 3 grade levels worth of students. So it's math. You take 300 students, multiply that by a certain square footage, and you get the footprint that you can renovate to new. Gildersleeve is much larger than that. So what we would have to do if we were to renovate to new Gildersleeve would be demolish 9,000 square feet. You'd have to take off of that building about 18% of the available square footage. And our architects looked at that, and generally they looked at it and said, the current music room, art room, office space where our reading and special education, there's a wing kind of on the side. Like basically you have to rip off the entire wing and then renovate to do the remaining space. This was a little bit surprising to our committee, and we didn't want to lose that space. There was a lot of discussion about this. So the committee decided that rather than pursue renovate to new status and demolish 9,000 square feet, the idea would be to simply pursue alterations and capital improvements necessary to upgrade the facility to make it suitable for grades 3 through 5. I know that's a little bit complicated, but it involves how the state calculates reimbursement percentages and the difference between renovate to new, alterations, and capital improvements. Next slide, please. So this was the committee's recommendation by a vote of 7-2, approximately 27 million. Now, again, we have a lot of work to do. I'm going to get to that in terms of dialing in what that number is, but to the tune of approximately $27 million, of which the majority of it, 75%, would be a responsibility for the town of Portland, with 25% reimbursement for the state for code compliance issues, roofs, school security, and ADA matters. You could do significant work on roof and HVAC and parking lot and windows and abatements necessary, do a significant amount of work on Gildersleeve to upgrade it and turn it into a highly serviceable facility for students in grades 3 through 5. Next slide, please. And then we have the secondary school. So the secondary school does need quite a bit of work. We took a deep dive into both the sightlines report, input from Bob, and other experts in terms of our HVAC technicians. And we recommend if we go to bond, we ask for an additional $8 million for the secondary school, specifically for a new roof, HVAC units, and all of the controllers necessary to run the air handling and create a good HVAC system. The way the system was designed here was not great. So I won't get into the details about 2-pipe and 3-pipe. I don't even understand it well enough, except to tell you that the indoor air quality and the roof at the secondary school needs to be addressed. So if we put $8 million into a bond, we could address those things and then hopefully apply savings from a school consolidation to address other capital needs. And we're confident that this would put us in a good position for the secondary school. Now, I don't know what the state reimbursement for this would be. I'm not entirely sure. We still are working on this. There are new programs. There's one called DRIP. There were HVAC grants that went out from the state. We have our work to do. We need to get in touch with our legislators in Hartford and really figure out what the reimbursement on this would be. The $8 million wouldn't all be on Portland. Some of it would be eligible for state reimbursement. I just can't say at this moment exactly what that percentage reimbursement would be. But the committee did vote, and this was a unanimous recommendation from the committee to do the $8 million worth of work on the HVAC system and roof at the secondary school, pursue aggressively any state reimbursement for that work, and then apply any overhead savings to additional projects that need to be done at the secondary school. Okay, next slide, please. So looping back, one of the things that I'm proud to say this committee's report does is I believe it's effectively addressed all of the concerns that led to the no vote. If anybody prints signs for a no vote this time, it can't say mega school. There is no more mega school. These are a current school sizes. We would be going back to Valley View as a pre-K 2. Before 2015, Valley View was pre-K 2. Gildersleeve currently serves 3 grade levels. Under this plan, Gildersleeve would serve 3 grade levels. The only change would be that the 6th grade would be moved to the middle school. I don't think anybody would call the middle school a mega school because here in Portland, Brownstone used to serve grades 6 through 8. So you're just going back in time. There is no mega school here. These are returning us to grade level and school sizes that the community has a long history with. So I believe our committee has addressed any concern about a mega school. Traffic, there will be no issues with traffic. As a matter of fact, I'm hopeful that traffic would improve. Again, Valley View is a pre-K 2. Before 2015, for a long time, Valley View served pre-K 2 students with portable classrooms. I never once heard any concerns about traffic when it was a pre-K 2 school. Gildersleeve, the traffic would actually be improved because we would fix finally that horrible crumbling parking lot and set it up to make a more effective and efficient bus loop and pickup area. But even if we didn't, there are 3 grades at Gildersleeve now. There would be 3 grades there. There is no issue with traffic. And moving 6th grade to this building, it would add some more students to the buses and would make the parent line for pickup at the end of the day a little longer. But the way that this campus is configured, I don't believe there would be any problem with traffic. Uncertainty regarding decommissioned schools. We have a plan for all of them. Again, Valley View will be pre-K 2, Gildersleeve would be 3-5, Brownstone would be handed over to Portland Park and Rec, Portland Youth Services, Portland Food Bank, expand the lease with Oak Hill, and then longer term, absorb the impact of the Nordic Spa and look to the Land Use Committee report for future uses. Loss of community gym space. Under this plan, Portland would gain a gym. So right now you have gym space at Gildersleeve, Brownstone Middle School, High School. Under this plan, you would have gym space at those 4 schools and Valley View. So Portland would be gaining a gym. I'm sure travel basketball would be delighted to hear that. Concerns that we didn't address secondary complex, we can check that off. This plan calls for an $8 million to put towards the secondary school HVAC system with applying overhead savings to other projects. So we've addressed that too. Cost mill rate increase and length of bond. I'm going to loop back to that with some of the other recommendations. But again, while this plan is more expensive than the $68 million mega school plan, what this plan does include, which the plan last November didn't, was money towards Brownstone, money towards the secondary school. So, and I'll talk a little bit about recommendations in terms of analyzing the fiscal considerations shortly. And then finally, community outreach and engagement. That's why we're here tonight, right? I'm hoping that we get feedback from the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen on this plan. If the Boards of Education and Board of Selectmen embrace this plan, we have a lot of work to do, and certainly educating the community about it and answering those concerns will begin tonight in earnest. Next slide, please. And I believe, I won't go through them, except to say that I believe that this plan would result in a renovated to new, very nice Valley View, an altered, very nice Gildersleeve, and an upgraded HVAC system at the secondary school, and would thereby, we could check off each of these. As we write ed specs plans and work with architects, we will make sure that within those projects, every single one of these priorities in that rank order is addressed. Okay, next slide, please. So I'll go through these quickly, but these are just a summary of your recommendations. Recommendation 1, consolidate Portland elementary school facilities from 3 schools to 2, relocate 6th grade to the middle school, apply savings from the school consolidation and retirement of existing bonding in town to work on the secondary school complex, decommission Brownstone, but bond $2 million for the electrical system and turn the facility over to Parks and Rec, Portland Youth Services, Portland Food Bank, and expand the lease with Oak Hill. Authorize a bond in the neighborhood of 42 to 47 million to renovate to new and slightly expand Valley View to create a pre-K 2 facility. Authorize a bond in the neighborhood of 26 to 30 million dollars to alter and do capital projects at Brownstone to create a 3-5 facility, and then an $8 million investment in the secondary school HVAC system. Next slide, please. Now, with that, these are other things that we would have to do very quickly here in order to realize this plan. My first recommendation is I'm hoping for a signal from the boards tonight to begin this work. I'm hoping to hear from the boards tonight that we want to move forward with this. This is the plan that we would like to see us pursue. And if so, again, I and our Board of Education and Bob, we have a lot of work to do. And it begins with, I'm going to recommend that we do another 10-year demographic study. We did the last demographic studies a year and a half ago. By the time these projects got going, we would need another 10-year look. So my recommendation is that we do another 10-year demographic study. The second thing, and this is most important, we need to have another architect firm, again, whether it's Fryer or not, whether it's Slam or Colliers or Fryer or Peruccio or whomever else, whatever, we need to have another architect work with us. All of this is in concept, but we have to take the in concept down to a conceptual order of magnitude budget and education specifications plan and a process to call all of that information together, share it with bond counsel, share it with the town's financial planner, and eventually bring this forward for a bonding measure with a number that we're confident in, both in terms of the number and the scope of the work. So Bob and I have a lot of work to do on this, but we need help. We really need the guidance from an expert, from an architecture firm who has done work of this kind and can help guide our considerations in our planning. Once we have that conceptual order of magnitude budget and that understanding of what we're going to be doing, all of that needs to be shared with the town's financial planner. And then that's when we get into the consideration of whether it's a 20-year, 25-year, 30-year, what the bonding and the amortization tables look like in terms of the debt repayment. And then this next one, I think, is really important. And this was discussed widely at the committee. And I think we would unanimously agree that the town, I understand the town's going through its plan of conservation. But in addition to that, or as part of that, I think hiring a financial planner to come in and look at the town and say, what's going to happen when you do reevaluation? What's going to happen when the tax abatement comes off at Brainerd Place? What is the impact of the Nordic Spa when it comes online? What new housing starts are here? What is your net grand list going to look like? And how much money would you be able to yield from that net grand list from your current mill rate? Right? That work needs to be done. In addition to the town looking at, we know the secondary bond expired, within the next 5 years, your park bond is going to expire. But on the other side, you have water, sewer, or any other needs. Like somebody needs to put all of these things in a spreadsheet. This is what's expiring. This is what's coming on. and a full look at the town's financial picture and growth in the net grand list over the next 10 years, and bring that forward to both your financial planner and your town, so that when you're looking at that amortization table that your financial planner puts together in terms of paying off this bond, we all understand how much of it is going to be offset by growth in the net grand list and retirement of existing bonding versus how much is going to have to be raised in the current mill rate formula. I see nodding heads. That was a lot. There's a lot to unpack there, but that it would be an essential step in terms of our communication efforts with the community. Many people of whom are going to be asking that all important question is, how much more am I going to have to pay in my property taxes? So that bond is really important, and we would need to do that this fall and winter. And of course, you have an election this November. Democracy is a powerful instrument. My recommendation is those folks who are running for elected office are going to need to take a position on this and answer that question. Do you support this? And, you know, I remember, I think it was George Bush who said elections have consequences, right? I remember him saying that. And people need to campaign on this. This is something that, hey, vote for me and this is what I'll support, or don't vote, or don't vote for me, or if you vote for me, this is what I'll support. I mean, part of the democratic system is that educate your constituents, ask for their vote, and let them know, if you vote for me, here is what I plan to do for our town. That alone is going to raise awareness in the community about what our plans might be. So I know that there was a hope that we could get this out last spring before the municipal election, so it wouldn't necessarily become an election issue, but that didn't happen. Here we are, the election's coming. I think that this needs to be a centerpiece of debates, discussions, campaign literature, and all of the things that happen this fall as we start to see the yard signs and get excited about who our next leaders are going to be or continue to be. And then, of course, one of the mistakes I think we may have made was that we need to be more assertive in our conversations with bond counsel. I'm not entirely sure if the way the last bonding measure was written and went forward on the ballot was the clearest way that it could have been. I think we have to have discussions with bond counsel before we draft the next bond measure, so it reflects the actual costs of the measure. And then, of course, make sure that all of this information is packaged. It's a very complicated thing. It's very hard to, there's no bumper sticker that I can put this on, right? The No Mega School was brilliant marketing. I can't compete with that because this isn't a bumper sticker plan. This is a very complicated information. I need help in terms of communicating it in a way that everybody can understand. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a marketer, but we need to make sure that we put all of this information together and share it widely in a way that people can make an informed decision and understand some very complicated things with mill rates and space reimbursement percentages and all of these things that can be relatively esoteric. Okay, next slide, please. So part of the charge from the Board of Selectmen was not only to bring forward a proposal, which you've got, but also a timeline. How could we make this work on the most aggressive timeline? So here's the suggested timeframe, and the committee discussed this and supports this. First timeline right now is summer and fall. So this summer, here we are, present the committee report at a joint meeting. We can check that off. That's happening tonight. Share the report with the community. I have done that. It is posted on the high school, on the public schools website. Anybody in the community can see it. Go to www.portlandschoolsct.org. You can see it right on the website. So I've shared the plan publicly. This fall, I think we need to leverage the municipal elections to begin educating the community and building coalitions, build support for the committee's recommendations. That needs to happen as part of the campaign process this September, October, and November. If all goes well, next slide, please. Okay, this fall into this winter, we need to do another demographic study. I can handle that. We need to develop an education specifications plan. Would be working on that. We need to engage an architecture firm. I need another expert like Mike Serrano, like Fryer Architect, or again, whether it's Slam or Colliers or Cruccio or any number of different firms in the state that do this kind of work. We need another expert to come in and help us develop the scope of work for a renovation to new and in alterations, as well as the work that needs to be done on the HVAC system with the engineering work, the secondary school, turn that into a plan, an actual plan with numbers that we can get behind, shared with construction firms so they double blind score the costs. So we know we have an actual number that we can put in something called a conceptual order of magnitude budget. We would then take that detailed scope of work and conceptual order of magnitude budget and share it with the town's financial planner. Concurrent with that, I'm hoping that the town considers either through the new land use work that the committee is working on, or through a financial planner, share that information with the town's, both the town's financial planner and bond counsel, so that we will understand what is the financial impact of this going to be on the town of Portland, as considered through the lens of projected growth in the town's net grand list, impact on the mill rate, retirement of debt obligations, future debt obligations, and savings from both overhead as well as growth in the net grand list as the tax abatement expires on Brainerd Place, as the Nordic Spa comes online, as you look at other housing starts in the town, and consider the impact of reevaluation. All that would need to happen. It's very aggressive this fall and winter, so that all of this can be shared with the community and eventually formed into a bonding resolution. Next slide, please. If we do that work this winter, I'm hopeful that this spring, we would be able to do a comprehensive education with the community, explain to everybody what it is they're voting on, and understand all of the implications of this plan, both from a teaching and learning perspective and a financial cost perspective. And this spring, I'm hoping bring forward another bonding resolution. If we can do that this spring, the deadline that I have to submit to the state for our grant application on a renovate to New Valley View is June 30th, 2026. So really a bonding resolution anytime before June 30th, 2026 would be necessary. The difference this time, unlike the presidential election, is that with the presidential election, I was allowed to submit the grant application before we had an authorized bonding measure. This time I can't do that. We have to have an authorized bonding measure before I submit the grant application. But if we do our work this summer, fall, winter, and spring, fingers crossed, we would then be in a position to submit that grant application by the deadline, which is June 30, 2026, which would then set us up for, next slide, next year. So 2026, 2027, if we're here right now, 12 months from now, we will be waiting to hear back from the state of Connecticut on our grant. We won't hear from the state until December 2026, right? So we submit it in June and we have to wait. But while we're waiting, it doesn't mean we're twiddling our thumbs. We will be planning, right? We will be building budgets and doing the work in preparation for what I can expect will be a positive response from the Department of Administrative Services on the grant application. But what this means is that for all of this year and all of next year, no changes, right? Our schools will continue to be what they are today for all of this year and all of next year. Next slide, please. So 2 years from now, if everything lines up, we'll go through this year, doing all of the work I laid out. We'll go through next year, planning and waiting. And then at the start of the 2027, 2028 year, That will be phase one. As part of phase one, sixth grade will move to the middle school. Pre-K 2 will move to Gildersleeve. Grades 3 through 5 will move to Brownstone. We will empty out Valley View for that entire year to do the work on Valley View to renovate it to new in the 2027-2028 school year. And of course, begin working on the secondary school. Next slide, please. Which would hopefully then bring us to the 2028-2029 school year, which would then be phase two. Valley View would be a brand new pre-K 2 school. We would move our students pre-K 2 back to Valley View and empty out Gildersleeve, do all of the abatement and work that we need to do to alter and do the capital improvements on Brownstone for the entirety of the 2028-2029 school year. Next slide, please. And then finally, at the start of the 2029-2030 school year, God, I'll be ready to retire just about. We will move grades 3 through 5 from Brownstone to Gildersleeve and turn over the keys to Brownstone to Portland Park and Rec, Portland Youth Services, Portland Food Bank, and hopefully at that point be ready to expand our lease with Oak Hill and let Brownstone evolve into its new function. So it's a long time. This is a five-year plan, but in order to actualize this plan, we need to get started now. So I'll let you all take a breath. That was a lot. Figured I would just fly through everything and then take questions at the end to expedite this a little bit. With that said, we have questions.
Anybody have questions?
In one of your last, well, that's loud. One of your last info sessions, I think it was last year, you had mentioned that there was an HVAC grant that the state was offering that would double our money. Is that still available?
Unfortunately, there were two rounds of that grant and that we missed. There was a promised third round of it that I have not heard of yet, but my fingers are crossed right now. So the answer right now is, as of now, I'm not aware of a third round of that grant. We missed that boat and I'm really kind of bummed about that because that would have been the 50% reimbursement on this $8 million project. Now, that said, there are other programs like one called DRIP. And I think that because we missed that third round of grants and it was promised, and I believe some of that money is still there. If this is embraced by the community, I think what we need to do is reach out to Norm Needleman and Christy Carpino and our friends in Hartford and say, come on, we weren't ready to do it then. We were promised the third round, which is why we maybe didn't move as assertively as we should have. Is there any way you can help us offset this $8 million roof project at the secondary school?
When you give the cost for bonding, is that the number before the state reimbursement?
Numbers before, yes. So that the 47 million for a renovate to New Valley View is what Fryer projects is the total cost. Of that, 60% we're hopeful between what we learned has actually been a little bit of an increase we were happy to see in our state reimbursement rate. And because we participate in open choice and we try to maintain 5% of our seats for open choice students, we get that bonus. And we get a little bit of a bonus at Valley View because we're making some pre-K space. So the state reimbursement, the bonus for the open choice, and the bonus for the pre-K space puts us, we're hoping, in that 60% range. So 60% of the 47 million would come from Hartford. The other 40% would come from the town of Portland. Now, that said, we have to be careful because those are for what are called eligible costs. At the beginning of a project, a lot of eligible costs look like they aren't eligible, but the way the architects explained it is that over the course of the project, those ineligible projects become eligible. So it's a little bit confusing, but I think that the committee was comfortable with that 60% reimbursement from the state number on a renovate to new project at Valley.
Okay, well, I think what spooks a lot of the voters is they see the big number, but they don't understand what the reimbursement is.
It's very complicated. And
So somehow when we're marketing this, we got to get that point across.
yeah,
Because that's a lot of what I heard. Well, 68 million for one new school, but a lot of people didn't realize we were going to get 55% of that back.
two comments on that. That is why this time I think, hey, we need to do a better job communicating this. I own some of that too. I think we need to be out there explaining to people, but also when we work with bond counsel to draft the language for the resolution, we can be more assertive. We can make sure that that reflects or includes language that identifies the reimbursements that we anticipate. So I think between communicating, working with bond counsel on the language for the bonding measure, and then three, this is the one I'm kind of most excited about, is an analysis from my financial planner on net grand list growth, impact of tax abatement expiring at Brainerd Place, impact of Nordic Spa coming on, any new housing starts, growth in the net grand list, how that, and reevaluation, how that offsets any projected mill rate increases resulting from this. So those are three critical things: that, the bond measure, and the work we do communicating this.
This is John Dillon. I'm on the Board of Selectmen, but I was also the board representative to this committee. Charles, if you could just, you touched on it, but I think people need to understand a little more. The committee decided to do a renovate to new on Valley View and to do a more of a, what's the term? Alterations on Gildersleeve because of the state reimbursement. And what I found unique with, and you can please speak to this, the renovate to new on Valley View, you were actually basically gutting the building and within the existing footprint based upon the state's square footage per child requirement. We will potentially gain 3 additional classrooms in that existing footprint and get the most reimbursement we can get. But to ensure that we have that flexibility for future growth, we chose not to take the full reimbursement for Gildersleeve because we would lose that square footage. Can you just speak a little more to that?
Yes. So it would be cheaper. I say it would be less expensive for the town of Portland's share if we did a renovate to new on Gildersleeve. The problem, though, is that in order to do that, you have to demolish 9,000 square feet of that building and shrink it so that you meet the state's square footage requirement. I don't know the exact number. I was going to give you a number, and I wish Mike Serrano were here. He would tell you that the way they work it is for every student, one student, you get 300 square feet. I don't know if that's the number, but thereabouts. So then it's math. So if your enrollment projections show that over the next 10 years in grades 3 through 5, you're going to have 310 kids, you take 310, multiply it by that square footage number, and that X, that 90,000 square feet or whatever it is the amount you can renovate to new. The problem is that Gildersleeve's huge. Gildersleeve's much bigger than that. And we'd have to literally put in a dumpster and take away and essentially almost 20% of that, almost a fifth of that building, you'd have to cart away. And I think that the committee's thought was that, yeah, we don't like that. We like the space. It's worth spending the extra money and pursuing only alterations and capital improvements and not renovate to new, because then we can keep that space as a hedge against any future enrollment growth. And it's nice to have the space, right? That's what our thinking was about Gildersleeve. Whereas at Valley View, renovate to new makes sense, right? It makes sense because even right now, just in terms of the square footage, Valley View's only slightly smaller than the space you need to get the second grade in there. If you got that school and then put up the interior walls and create the classrooms, you can almost fit them in the existing footprint. Now, the building in a renovate to new will grow because we're going to be adding a full-size gym, which is great. And we're going to be blowing out one of the walls kind of down by the library to get a couple more classroom and office spaces in there. But by gutting the school, you can do that, create enough classrooms for pre-K and to 2 and add a gym and stay within that state reimbursement rate so that we can net the 60% that Hartford would give us for that project.
Thank you.
Just one thought for marketing. You may want to use the term renovate to almost new for Gildersleeve.
Right.
Because when people hear just alterations, we think, oh, just window dressing on the old building that's falling apart. So
Yeah, I agree with you. And somebody, please be prepared to help me with the marketing. I'm not good at that, right? So I would need help with that. But what we would see in working with an architect in a conceptual order of magnitude budget is exactly what those projects would be. New roof, new windows, security upgrades, man trap, cameras, all the things we need, ADA compliance. Good God, a complete renovation of that parking lot, which is a disaster. New bus loop, new parking, moving the playground. We would see in that all of those things that would be done at Gildersleeve, including things like abatement for hazardous materials and other things, and upgrading the HVAC system to include new boilers and air conditioning, right? And actual air handling units that move air around so that we can have better air than just an open window with a fan.
I know I was a broken record in the committee, but you touched on it, Charles. I think the one thing that we did not do our due diligence on last time was, again, talking about public relations, about selling this and explaining this to the community. And what we assumed that putting everything on a web page and making all the documents available was going to be enough. There's so much data in there and so much confusion with that. I've said all along, I think what we're doing here tonight, we need to do multiple times with the public available to come, to get the appropriate people to explain to the public what we're talking about tonight, about what the state reimbursement means and how we go about it and how much it can impact us. But using the Route 17 park as a perfect learning tool, when they did a lot of sales, a lot of public presentations like this in the course of that. And I think we need to make that opportunity available to the public, to let them come, let them sit down, let them hear the presentation, let them ask the questions. There was a lot of confusion last time around. And unfortunately, in this political climate, everybody thinks about misinformation and mistrust. There was none of that, but I think we need to make sure we present it to the public in a very open way so that they all walk out of this room feeling like they understand.
I agree. And I'll say this nicely, and I'll be careful with this in some cases. A lot of you in here are politicians, right? Every certain number of years, you run for office, right? This November, this fall, you're going to be out there campaigning, right? I mean, you're going to have your campaign literature. You're going to be canvassing. You're going to be shaking hands. I imagine there are going to be tents at the Portland Fair. I agree with you. Part of this marketing campaign has to start with run on or against this, right? I mean, I think it's fair for anybody who I would vote for. I'd want to know, are you for this or not? And if you're not for this, what are you for? Well, so that I'm investing in you and you're communicating to me what that plan is. Of course, we're going to do more. We need to do a much better job. 100% agree with you. We'll do focus groups and community forums and get out there as best we can. And we need to have political action committees. I hope the teachers are going to be fully engaged in this, and we're going to educate people. But I do think that this year's municipal election gives Portland a fair opportunity to vote for the people that are you behind this? And if you're not okay, and if you're not behind this, what are you behind? Or are you behind nothing? I mean, if you're going to run on, I don't think we should do anything. The schools are just fine the way they are. I mean, campaign on that, or don't, or campaign on this, because that's the power of democracy. In my mind, I learn as much about people's policy positions and how they're going to spend my money when I vote for them. And by voting for them, I'm not surprised. One thing I'll say about Donald Trump, he hasn't lied about a thing. He's done exactly doing now what he said he was going to do when he ran. And I respect him for that. I don't agree with everything he's doing, but he told us he was going to do that, right? That's what this fall will give the municipal people running the opportunity to do. And I think that that's going to raise the awareness in and of itself.
This is Mike Pelton. I think that's a great point, and I think you've done a great job presenting the details because it's a lot. And I think at the end of the day, the last referendum failed for a number of reasons, legitimate reasons. People had concerns, but whenever there's something complicated like this, it's a lot easier to manipulate on both sides. So I think the more information we do, the better. But I think at the end of the day, to get someone that's listening right now or in here right now to vote yes, I think they have to have two things that get checked off. They have to make sure it's needed, and I think you've presented a plan that shows it's needed for a lot of reasons, and it's also affordable. And how we do that. So those two things have to be checked. You can't get to a yes without going, we need it for all these reasons, and we can afford to do it. It's a scary number. The 68 million before was a scary number for most people. They didn't know we'd get back about 50% of that. The numbers, when you add these up, are a lot. But can we afford it with the Nordic Spa, with the Brainerd Place, with everything else going up? We're at an inflection point right now in town where we have a number of things going on, and this will be the largest project that the town has done. So it's vital that we get it right. But I appreciate all this, and I think everyone needs to listen. So I'm fully on board with getting as much education out there as I can. I'm certain that our board would be, whether the members are individually for it, against it, neutral. I think we all agree that we need to get people better educated about this, and I think we'll all be beating the drums on this and getting the word out there. So.
Hi, Meg Scotta. I'm on the Board of Ed, and I did serve on 2 of the 4 committees that have turned over every rock in town. As a community, we're dedicated to providing the highest quality of education for our students. I don't hear that right now. I hear footage, I hear HVAC, I hear security, I hear the buildings are falling apart. But I think we're at a crossroads, and we have a plan, and the plan is the result of many, many years and many minds, including architects and educational professionals, as well as local community people, coming together to find the best plan. And I would support getting the information out, but also keeping in mind that we're committed to high quality education and the efficiency of operating our schools in a safe and a practical way. So I hope that, this doesn't come to another argument about no, we're not doing it, or yes, we can. I hope we can all get behind this with some simple facts, some good numbers so people know what they're voting for. And next spring, we'll have an opportunity to vote on this plan. But I think it's the best plan, considering that probably 40 to 50 people have been involved in all of the data gathering.
Bobby Hetrick, Board of Selectmen. Why would we wait until construction starts to close the school?
Why would we wait till construction starts to close the school? You mean, okay.
Because so the plan shows 2 more years of all the schools being open if this passes at referendum?
Well, I think there's two answers I want to give you to that. Certainly, we could move sixth grade to the middle school now. I'm not sure what I would do with fifth grade, right? What I would have to do to close a school now would be, I guess, bring in portable classrooms, attach them to Valley View and move the second grade into portable classrooms. If you remember, you had portable classrooms. We could pull those old plans back out, buy 5 more portable classrooms, move second grade into those portable classrooms, move sixth grade to the middle school, and move fifth grade to Gildersleeve, right? That to me would be the only way I could close a school now without a plan. The downside of that is really any savings, and especially in the first year for that, would be in the new lease or buying the portable classrooms. It would also be disruptive, and it would also leave Brownstone vacant, right? And at some point we would need Brownstone to be used as swing space during which is my second part. Brownstone, we are lucky now that we have 3 small schools that we can use as swing space, right? One of the things the architect, as you remember, from the facilities study committee told us was that because you have swing space and don't have to have double sessions or bring in portable classrooms or beg other towns to take your kids for a year or do lots of things that schools that don't have that space have to do when they do projects like this, it's saving you millions in time, energy, effort, and upsetting people. Otherwise, kids have to go to school in a construction zone, right? Which is also, especially if it's a construction zone with hazardous materials. Sometimes you can't, right? So closing a school before this, I'm not saying it couldn't be done. I'm saying it would be expensive. It would be logistically challenging, and it would also not set you up for the greatest possible success in using the facilities wisely as swing space. So could it be done? It could. I mean, hey, I guess if Bob, I haven't checked in with you. If the boiler doesn't show up for Brownstone on time and the other one goes before it gets too cold, we might have to figure that out, right? But that would be an emergency. I don't like it. I wouldn't want to do that to our kids and teachers and everybody. I think that would be very disruptive to teaching and learning.
All right. Why are we planning on building a full-size gym at Valley View if Valley View has never had a full-size gym?
I think that's something that the community would benefit from, and I'm not prepared to answer that. I mean, could you save some money by leaving it a multi-purpose space and not putting a gym on there? I'm sure you could, but if you're going to do the renovate to new, get the 60% reimbursement, it fits within the space standards, and you're gutting the building anyway, I think it would make sense to put a nice wood floor basketball court there, both for the pre-K2 students to use and for the community to have as a recreational space. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. There's a question on Zoom. I wasn't sure if we're just taking board member only questions at the moment, say if they missed their public comment, or is question for the entire public?
Tim, do you want to go or do you want to wait for the Zoom question?
I'm just joking.
Oh, okay. All right, why don't we do the Zoom question, Dylan? Thank you.
All right, we're gonna unmute Don Goyne.
Good evening. I've had a question that's bothered me since the start of the discussion way back when of changing the schools. And that question is, when I graduated from high school in 1957, we had 62 graduates and we had 2 schools, the central school and the high school. And I understand that we are going to graduate a similar number of students, and we have 5 schools. What constituted us getting to that point where we have 5 schools for the same number of students that graduated when we had 2?
Whew. How much time do you have for that one? Okay.
I got as much time as you need. This has been bothering me for a long time.
All right.
In order for people like myself to make a decision, I believe we have to understand that reasoning.
All right, let me back you up then. This is BC before Charles, right?
Yes,
I want to take you to 2002, right? At that time, the community decided to build new Portland Middle School. Before 2002, you had Valley View, which was serving students in pre-K 2 with portable classrooms. You had Gildersleeve, which had students in grades 3, 4, 5. You had Brownstone Middle School, which had students in grades 6, 7, 8, and you had Portland High School with grades 9 through 12. You didn't have the middle school. The decision was made at that time to build Portland Middle School brand new and gut and renovate to new Portland High School. When you did that, it is true, Don, that you could have moved everybody out of Brownstone to the new middle school, right? You had enough room to make this a 6-8 school,
right.
but that would have necessitated closing Brownstone. Okay. Now, the elephant in the room is just that. Decommissioning Brownstone as a school, I believe, is something that would not have been supported in Portland back then. And I'm wondering even now if it's something the community will support. It could have been done then. You could have moved 6, 8 out of Brownstone Middle School to the new middle school here. Instead, the decision was made to only move 7, 8, leave grade 6 at the Brownstone, change it from Brownstone Middle School to Brownstone Intermediate School, and move 5th grade out of Gildersleeve to join them at the new Brownstone Intermediate School. At that time, 2004, when you opened the middle school, the district became pre-K 2 at Valley View with portable classrooms that were literally falling apart. I hear horror stories about them. Grades 3 and 4 only in the huge brown Gildersleeve. I can imagine half of that building was empty. And grades 5 and 6 at Brownstone, grades 7 and 8 at the middle school, and 9 through 12 at the high school. The reason and I only know this because I've read it in reports, that the decision to do that is because at that time, the condition of the portables at Valley View was abysmal. They had portable classrooms are by definition not there meant to last forever, and they were falling apart. I think the Board of Ed at that time was saying, get rid of those portables, rip them off, and move the 2nd grade to Gildersleeve. And that's how you ended up here, right? My speculation to answer your question specifically about how you added the 5th school was, well, you built it and you didn't close one. Could you have, in terms of the physical capacity of the space? Yes, you could have moved 6, 7, 8 out of Brownstone Middle School to the secondary school, but that decision was then not to do that. And I believe it was because of community sentiment and feeling about Brownstone. I see shaking heads. Did I get that right? So essentially, this plan that I just presented to you will have us doing just that thing that wasn't supported in 2002. Exact thing. And
And I understand what you said, and I agree with it because that's just what happened. However, wouldn't there be a savings if we closed the Gildersleeve School completely and walked away from it?
yes, part of the pitch behind consolidating to one school, pre-K 5, was that you would have realized savings if you decommissioned Brownstone and Gildersleeve. I put together a report that outlined what you would save by reducing 2 principals, 2 nurses, 4 custodians, 4 secretaries, 2 nurses, electrical, heat, gas, upkeep, parking, paving, taking care of lots. Yes, there was considerable savings in the consolidation to one school. There will also be some significant savings in consolidating from 3 to 2. So the answer to that is yes. I think what you're saying is that in 2002, by keeping Brownstone open, did you add both the cost of the bonding for the new secondary school and the cost of the overhead to run Brownstone? That is a fact.
Yes. Now, I agree that what your plan is for the brownstone on Main Street is an excellent plan. We need that space for park and rec, et cetera. But I would think that if we closed the Gildersleeve School completely and consolidated our students on High Street, that would even give us better savings because of the less traffic for moving the children, the bus costs and everything. So why don't we have a plan to do that? Why do we have a plan to keep a school open that's going to cost the taxpayer money for roughly the same number of graduates that we have today in 2025 that we had in 1956?
So, Don, we did. That was the pre-K 5 school plan that lots of people vote no on the mega school. We don't want 2 facilities only. No to that. And the Portland voters came out and 65% of the voters said no to the plan that would have had us return to 2 facilities.
But I think that vote came that way because there was never a published number of savings for the closing of that school. No one that I've talked to, and I didn't know myself, how much money we would actually save if we closed that school outright. That was never told to the public, wasn't told to me.
So unfortunately, and I'm going to own this part, that was published. It was something that we did do and shared that number, and it was over $1 million a year in overhead savings that would have resulted from decommissioning 2 schools, and Consultington was over, I think it was about $1,200,000 a year in savings we could have realized. It was shared with the facility study committee. It did end up on the website, but that is the problem. It was one of hundreds of pieces of very complicated information that was lost in a bunch of hyperlinks on the website.
I agree. Yes.
And that's a failing. I own that too, right? That
But why aren't we pursuing that now if we can save the taxpayer over $1 million a year? We're not talking pennies. We're talking $1 million a year in tax money. Why don't we do that now? Why isn't that presented to you're talking about doing a better job of advertising, which I agree 100% with. But why don't we include in that advertising that if we close that school, we can save the taxpayer $1 million a year?
You know, I'll need to speak for the facility study committee. Carl, and I think he was right, was very clear in one of the first meetings when he said that ship has sailed, right? That we tried. The vote no on the mega school side won, and that to now go back at that again, I don't know that there's an appetite in the community to do that, but maybe, Carl, I see you about to say something.
Don, this is Carl Johnson, Chairman of the Strategic Planning Committee. When we were brought in to the meeting, we were told that the plan for one school by then First Selectman Curley, that plan was dead and gone. That's when we started from there working with decommissioning one school. I understand what you're saying. It makes sense, but with 60% of people against it, it was voted down.
But Carl, you just mentioned one school, and I believe we would have 2 schools.
Well,
So we'd have 2 schools, the high school, middle school, and the Valley View.
let me clarify that. You're correct. We would have one elementary school, pre-K through 5. That was the plan for Gildersleeve. I was not on the committee at that point, but that was the plan that was voted down. And along with that, we would have 6, 7, and 8. Correct me if I'm wrong, Charles.
Correct, yep.
6, 7, and 8 at the middle school. at the secondary complex, as well as 9 through 12. And that's what we would have had, 2 facilities for this town to take care of, but people felt it was too big. There was too many students in it, and they were just not comfortable with it.
I see. Well, so there's no plans to inform the residents at this time that if they did close the Gildersleeve School, it would save them $1 million.
At this time, the committee's put forward a plan that there will be some overhead savings in consolidating and decommissioning Brownstone only. I'm not entirely sure that there's an appetite to revisit the pre-K-5 school. I think that with a 65% vote on that, that was a no. That was the community did not want that. And I'm not sure that enough has changed in community sentiment now. I think that there are enough people in Portland that like small schools, that feel that having that small school reflects the small town that we are.
And I agree, if that's what the majority wants to do and they're comfortable with not getting that $1 million savings, then, so be it. But I would wonder if they actually knew that number of savings, if they would still vote the same 60%.
It's a good point.
Ben, sir.
And whose responsibility is it to bring that point to the residents, to actually give them the information they need to make an educated decision?
Mike? Yeah, I mean, so, and then I know that there's another comment. Here's what I think needs to happen, right? I think you got, this is a lot of information, right? And I know that I've met with the board of education, and I know where their heads are, but I think they too need some time to think. I think everybody on both boards need to go. I'm hoping this shows up as agenda items. More conversations are had. The committee report is on the website. Give it a read. I'll put this up there. You'll have this recording. You know where I am. I'll be running around all the schools like crazy this week because kids are coming back, but everybody's got my cell phone. Give me a call if you have questions. Search your hearts and ask yourself, is this what you want? Is this what you want? And if it is, great. We got a lot of work to do. I'm not sure. And again, I don't know that I would recommend that we should go back out again with the pre-K-5 school. I don't know that that's a wise move. Now, that's not necessarily for me to decide. I'm not an elected member of the Board of Education or the Board of Selectmen. If that's what the Board of Education and Board of Selectmen want to go back out with, you take the votes and make it happen, and I will help execute it, right? But that's a political discussion for your elected leaders in town.
Charles, it's me up in the booth. That was our the only person from Zoom, and I think Tim had a comment, and I think Ben Serb has one. So we're gonna switch.
Yeah, he's got the microphone. Go for it.
I'm muting those mics now.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goen said a lot of good things. There's so much I could touch on. Just to give an example, the high school, middle school is literally larger than all of our population would need square footage wise. To put it in perspective, how we got ourselves in trouble over the years. We have like 208,000 square feet, and I think we would need somewhere around 160 to actually work as a community. So to give you an idea how overbuilt we are. A rabbit hole came up tonight, and it's the best way I can describe it. Mr. Goon, you brought up a good point about we need to get numbers out there of $1 million in savings and things to that effect. And it's just not true. And I'm going to tell you why. And I want to make sure we're all on the same page. If we are going to turn over the brownstone and make it a town facility, that could be wonderful. That's great. But there's a cost involved in that. So whatever savings we save on the right hand, we're going to be giving it to the left hand in the future. So for example, The electricity's still going to be there. Arguably, it's going to go up because we're adding air conditioning. You're still going to plow it. You're still going to mow it. You're still going to maintain it. Everything but facility, Dr. Britton was completely accurate. When he mentioned there is going to be some administration savings, potentially things like that, maybe a school nurse, but that's about it. There isn't going to be this massive amount of money being saved to the community on the brownstone scenario. You brought up the point of potentially closing Gildersleeve, and you're right there. There would be a savings, but there's also a cost. And we had estimates of 5 million to tear the school down. And then what do you do with the property, that sort of thing. So it's not as cut and dry as everybody wants to make it seem, but I just want to make sure we all fully understand. We have to do something as a community. Our buildings are in disarray. We're trying to move the ball forward in one way or another. The voters are going to speak. But I think the most important thing that was brought up tonight, Dr. Britton brought up that we should do, what is this going to cost? Because I think ultimately, and I think Mike Pelton did an excellent job bringing up the 2 points. How do you get this over the finish line? And I think the second one is so important because if it's just not achievable, we may have to look at things differently. My point is, if this is going to be a $50 million bill, which it's going to be, if we choose to go this path, and then there's interest, maybe it's 90 million to the taxpayers over 25 or 30 years, but that's what it is. And then we have to see what comes online. I'm not sure. The only thing I struggled that you said tonight, I'm not sure what the reval, other than it would potentially shift from commercial to residential burden. But other than that, you're not gaining any actual tax dollars. You're just potentially shifting them. But there's just a lot of moving components. And I think the most important thing is before somebody gets behind it, and I know you brought up the fair and going around trying to sell this, we need to get the facts. What's it going to cost? Can we afford it? How do we get this to the finish line? Which projects? Maybe we have to scrap one of the projects and do the rest or what, but these are the things that I think are more important. So I think fiscally, it is very responsible that we get that done with what the new monies are coming in, what their burdens falling off. I think that is the most important thing to get this over the finish line, in my opinion. But, and thanks again, Mr. Goon, for your comments.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Britton. You did a fantastic job. This is like three-dimensional chess and just kind of really laying a foundation, walking us through with the conclusion that the committee worked on for 8 long months. I mean, I can't even imagine. But there was a 7-2 vote. You did an excellent job explaining why you reached the conclusion, but what were the reason that you believe that there were 2 folks that voted no?
Sure.
In a positive sense, right? Just to hear the other
Yeah,
side of it. There were 2
100%.
people that sat there every day and said no.
Yeah.
What was the reason?
The 2 that voted no made a motion. It's on tape right there. The motion was made to decommission Valley View, turn Gildersleeve into a pre-K 2, turn a Brownstone into a 3-5, and move the 6th grade to the middle school. So the 7 votes were for decommissioning Brownstone. That's really the primary difference. The 2 votes would have preferred to decommission Valley View. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I think is that about it? We're good. Not too bad. Can keep you out too late? I know it's a lot. I'll just close by saying, Carl, thanks again. That was a lot of work. I know, Jen, I see you're here. Thank you. I really appreciate that you said it was 8 months of hard work. It was a lot. This was a lot of time people gave away from their families. Nobody got paid on this committee. Everybody was passionate. We didn't all agree on everything, but who does in Portland, as far as I can tell, right? I mean, but I think we did really good work, and we had really strong leadership from Carl and from Laurel. I can't thank you guys enough for that. And you've done really good community service. And I also got to recognize all of you Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen members. Again, you're not here getting paid for any of this. You're here because you love the kids and you love the schools. And I have all the respect in the world for that. I think you're great people, and this is a really special town. So with that said, Mike, I'll let you close your meeting.
Right. Dr. Burton, excellent job. Carl, thank you. Board of Selectmen members, Board of Ed members, thank you for being here. If you're watching at home, this will be the first of what I hope are going to be a number of meetings like this, both informative as well as interactive. So I encourage you to pay attention, listen to what's going on out there. Click on the links and dig into the reports if you want to, but more importantly, be aware and open to further discussion. There is a lot to unpack here. It's a big project. It's a lot of money. There's some passionate folks in here that believe on both sides that they're right, that they have a good idea for Portland, but it's a lot to do and we want to get it right. To quote Ben Serb, we want to get it right. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, sure.
I would just ask that not everybody is connected to the internet. You know, and I'm not being facetious with saying that, but please get this in the River East. I think everybody reads the River East. If it's beating a dead horse in there, or tell the people in the community that there will be handouts at the town hall or wherever we could put them in places so people, you know, maybe some of the older people in town who don't use computers and everything can at least get access to this information and read it themselves and not hear it second and third hand. Thank you.
I want to reemphasize that point because I think any vote, it's the voter with the least amount of information that's more likely to vote no, just because it's a scary number. Once you understand what the numbers are, what they do, you're more likely to vote yes, or at least understand it well enough to be able to get to yes. I wanted to address one more point too before I close up. Don asked about the school, the old school versus the old plan versus the new plan. Another big part of the difference too is having watched all of the meetings, and they were a long time, by the way, every meeting. The new plan, the plan that you guys have presented tonight includes the capital improvements, includes the $2 million for Brownstone, includes $10 million for the middle school, high school, whereas the original plan with Valley View did not include that. So it's not an apples to apples comparison, but Don brings up a good point because a lot of people just don't know all the details. They don't know enough to know what to ask. So again, I encourage those of you that are in favor of it, those that have questions about it, get out and advocate, talk about it, make sure it's good information. I will do everything I can between now and election time and now and whenever we get this out in the referendum is to advocate what I feel is the best interest for the town. I think everyone is going to be doing the same thing. I encourage you, whether I agree or disagree with you, we should be encouraging those to understand what the project is and how it works and how it will affect Portland in the next 5, 10, 20 years. This is going to be a huge impact for a generation. So a lot to think about. So with that, I'd like to close the meeting and thank everyone for coming tonight. Thank you very much.